Hey, everybody, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day and able to beat the heat, hopefully. We've actually had, where I live, unfortunately, quite a few power outages due to multiple people, I guess, trying to cool their homes as much as they possibly can during I think our heat index is somewhere up around 112, and just insanely humid out where I'm at, unfortunately. And it makes you really wonder all the people that are pushing all the wanting to make it mandatory to have everybody have an electric car when our grid is shutting down just because the air conditioning is running pretty steadily in most of the homes on any given hot day. You kind of see the insanity of that pretty well exposed when you see that sort of thing happen. So, anyway, I'm going to dive into today's topic, but first, I want to welcome everybody to the channel that's new. And I want to encourage everybody to hit the like, subscribe button, hit the notification bell as well. All of that helps the algorithm and helps the channel. Today's topic, um, you have to be broken before you can become whole. You have to just accept the reality that being broken is just a part of the process that we all have to go through. It might be through relationships, it might be through work and business and other things that are going on in our lives, but we're going to have to accept that a lot of our learning process is going to be through damage and through taking a loss and through taking a hit that we weren't probably expecting. And that is just simply part of the process of growing as a human being. And I realize that there's a lot of people out there that they almost have like a shame version of approaching this where they feel like once you've reached some sort of level of understanding, this sort of thing should never happen. Now, granted, you can minimize it quite a bit, but there will always be a learning curve where we have to be forgiving of ourselves that we are going to make mistakes along the way, and that a huge amount of the time those mistakes are going to be learning opportunities for us. In fact, if you're smart about it, no mistake will ever be a wasted opportunity for you because you will figure out a way to turn that into something that is a learning opportunity where you can now turn around and apply that to your life in a way that is going to improve things in the future for you. But I think part of the process of that is we have to be willing to accept the fact and be forgiving of ourselves about the fact that we are going to take losses along the way, no matter how far we get into thinking things through, trying to be logical, trying to be reasonable. We are going to make mistakes. I myself still go through this process. I mean, I've mitigated and limited the amount of time that I deal with that when it comes to dealing with the opposite sex, when it comes to my business practices and my money. But at the same time, there's going to be times where you make mistakes and you're trying your best to not do that. But oftentimes you're going to stumble into a situation or a relationship like we discussed this before on the channel. There are people out there that are chameleons that completely hide the way that they approach life, that they approach relationships. They hide their intentions and then they sneak it in on you later on down the road where you end up finding out they are not at all who they said they were. And they were very, very good at hiding and adapting that. And sometimes those people are nearly impossible to completely spot along the way. They slowly get exposed over time as the lies and the deceptions get peeled back, or you suddenly come to a point where a revelation comes forward and you find out, oh wow, they've been lying to me this whole time. And unfortunately, the people that are chameleons like this that do this sort of thing, they have a way of just kind of honing and refining their process of deception just as much as we're all sitting here talking about this in these videos where we're trying our best to become a better version of ourselves, trying to have better relationships with people, trying to be more on the level and more honest with ourselves, more honest with people around us. There are people out there that engage with life by finding more and more ways to be con artists, to be deceptive, to be extremely dodgy and shady about everything. And everything that they're doing is honing their craft to try and figure out how they can trick somebody out of money, time, resources. And a lot of those times, those people are going to find ways to slip past the radar of even somebody who is very, very seasoned because they figured out ways to present and promote themselves to make it look like they're the genuine article. And that's just one example of it. That's just one example of how we have to be forgiving of ourselves, because sometimes it takes time to reveal that deception. Sometimes it takes time to peel back the lies and figure out the truth of what we're actually dealing with. And that's going to take up time in our lives. But part of our life is that journey and is that process. And we have to accept that that's what it is. We have to accept that that is the journey that we are all on together. I myself, kind of over the years, have had to learn to forgive myself for making some of the mistakes that I made, because at certain points, like, I know I talk a lot about red pill content and a red pill message here on the channel, but there's certain points where along the way I was learning and discovering things simply because the red pill message didn't exist. Nobody was really talking about most of the things that I went through when I went through it with my first marriage. Uh, Nobody was really talking about any of those things. That just wasn't even a point of conversation in most places, even online. Nobody even had any idea about it. Nobody knew what it was. Like, if you went online and you were cheating and screwing around on your spouse, nobody even had really a description for it. Nobody had really articulated, hey, that's what's happening. That's now affecting everything. Nobody realized how much online dating was going to affect everything at that point. It was in a process where we began to see the results of it and realized, okay, this is going downhill fast. And you're experiencing it over time and beginning to realize, okay, I need to adapt and change based upon what's going on, and what we're seeing is the end results of some of these things. And I think it's very easy for people to come down on themselves and forget that that is part of what's going to be happening every single day. No matter how accomplished or good you are at, you know, spending time in solitude, developing yourself and learning who you are. No matter how good you are at that, you are still going to go through this process no matter what. There's going to be points where you run into a situation where everything is not completely upfront, and you might get deceived. You might get lured into a situation where what you were expecting to happen is not what you ended up getting, and that's completely okay. And so I think a lot of this is just determined by us being forgiving of ourselves and expecting that we're going to have to be broken to be made whole. And that's always going to be a part of the process. If you're somebody who understands going to the gym, hitting the weights, and the tearing of the muscle, you're tearing the muscle down to build it back up and grow it bigger and stronger. You have to have it be broken before it can be made whole and grow bigger and stronger. This is something that is a process that is constantly happening in our lives, in our personal lives, in our professional lives, just in our development and growth as people. As we become a better version of ourselves, this is something that is constantly going to be happening. There's a difference between this and somebody who is willfully ignorant of what's actually going on out there and is not able to learn any lessons from anybody, and they keep repeating the same mistakes. There is a difference between what I'm describing and that. And I want to make that clear. There are people out there that, unfortunately, they see other people get bit by the snake, and for some stupid reason, they got to go get bit by the snake instead of realizing they can learn that lesson from the other people without having to go through the experience of having a bunch of venom injected into your life. You could learn it from somebody else. So I think the main message here is we have to be forgiving and accepting of ourselves when it comes to the learning process. Now, there's going to be times where you do make a stupid mistake that somebody did warn you about or that you could have spotted. And you're going to have honest self reflection about that and admit that was idiotic. I did not need to do that. I didn't need to go through that to learn a lesson from that. I could have learned it from somebody else, or I knew going into this that this was a bad deal. And there's a lot of the times that you can trust your gut on that. Like, if you're going into a situation where you realize, okay, the person that I'm dealing with is being incredibly evasive, they're being incredibly dodgy about stuff, or there's a situation where it involves business or a something involving work where you feel like there's intentional misleading or deception, or there is something being hidden from sight. Like, it's sort of like sensing the gravity of another planet. You can't see what's causing it, but you can see the effect that it's causing. You can see the effect that it's having on everything, and you realize, okay, my gut instinct and intuition is telling me this is a bad situation. I need to get out of this. I need to not trust this. Our gut will oftentimes tell us that, but throughout the learning process, there are going to be times where we are genuinely going to go through something where we get broken, where we get fooled, and where we get tricked, and we have to forgive ourselves. That's just one part of it. And good thing, once you learn that lesson, once you learn that lesson from that particular thing in your life, now in the future, you'll have a better sense of how to avoid that completely. Thankfully, you don't ever have to per se learn that lesson again. You can kind of put that on the books and say, okay, I've come this far and I've gotten past that. But yes, you have to remember that we have to be broken to be made whole. We just have to. We That makes us a better version of ourselves, and that is part of what we have to accept, but only part. Anyway, that's really all I have for today, and I hope you guys are having a great day, staying cool where you are if you're in a part of the country where it's blazing hot like it is here. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Have a great day.